Hello friends and welcome to this session. Here we will learn how to use for and for each loop constructs in our looping requirements. We will also see how to use for each with arrays and collections containing string and user defined objects. So with no further delay, let's fire it up.
Now coming to for loops, it also does the same thing as while and do while. It repeats a code block, but the syntax of it is as follows. So first of all, we will write the keyword for, then we will initialize a control variable, then put a semicolon, and then we will write the decision control statement, which will define how many times the loop runs, and then we will have the decision control variable update statement. And then we will open the code block within which we will write the program body. So for this example, let us print out the value of I. And now we will run this loop and see how many times it runs. So we can see the loop has run 10 times. Now how did that happen? So basically we have declared i's initial value as 1, and this loop is going to iterate as long as the value of I is not greater than or equal to 10. And after each iteration, we are going to increment the value of I by 1. So in the first iteration, the value of I is less than 10. So this evaluates to a true. So this will execute. In the next iteration, it will be a 2, it will evaluate, and so on and so forth till the value of I is, let's say, 9. So when the value of I is 9, this will execute, and on the next iteration, the value of I will be 10. Now 10 is not less than 10, so this condition evaluates to a false, and the loop will not execute the body and it will come out. It will jump to the control here. So now there are various caveats which are attached with the statements that we have just written in the for loop. So all these three statements that we have written within the loop, these are totally optional. So if we don't write the decision statement here, by default, this will assume the value of true and this loop will run forever. If we don't write the initialization statement here, we are free to write this statement at the top of the loop. So if I take this out and put it at the top of the loop, that is absolutely fine. The decision control variable update statement that we have written here, that also we can remove from here and put it somewhere in the code body. Why I am putting it in the code body and not outside? Because this needs to be executed each time the loop runs. And whenever the loop runs, this code block is what gets executed. So this update statement makes sense to be put within the code block and not outside the loop. So now also if we run this loop once, we will see we are getting the exact value. Now what will happen if we remove this decision statement? So let's say I delete this statement. Now if we run, we will get a infinite loop. This loop will go on and on. So when there are no statements within the for loop, we will have something of this sort. So it will have only 2 semicolons. So let me go ahead and put everything back the way it was. I'll write the decision statement also and the update control variable statement as well. Now the next thing that we are going to see is how we can nest one loop within the other. So let's say I want to print a structure like this. Let's say I want to print a row of stars containing 5 columns of this sort, let's say. Okay, so we are going to print something of this sort. So we see there are 5 rows. So we will have one loop which will be responsible for printing out 5 rows of stars, and then another loop which will be inside that outside loop which will be responsible for printing out a row of stars. So one will be printing out multiple rows and the other loop will be responsible for printing a single row of stars. So let us quickly define one for loop. I will again declare I equals to 1, I should be less than equal to 5 because I want 5 rows of stars to be printed, and I will increment the value of I by 1. Now within this loop, I am going to write one more for loop. I will use j this time, and j also will be iterated 5 times because we need to print 5 stars in a single row. So there are 5 rows and 5 stars in a single row. So the outside loop will be responsible for printing out 5 rows, and the inside loop will be responsible for printing out 5 stars for each row. And now we can finally start writing the program logic. So we will print out the star like this and add a space, and we have removed the ln because I don't want to print a new line when we are printing out the stars for a single row. Otherwise these stars will come in a single column that we don't want. That's why we're using print method instead of print ln method. So once we have a complete row of stars, that means one iteration of this loop is done. So it will come out. Once it comes out, we will print a new line, because once this loop comes out, that means we have a row of stars printed. Now we have to go to the next row. So we have to print a new line. So we print a new line here, and then again this loop gets executed and we get the row of next stars. So now if we run this code, we see that we are getting the exact same stars being printed. Now coming to the next topic that we want to discuss. So there is one more kind of loop called for each loop, which will help you iterate without the 3 statements that we have written above. So we don't need initialization, decision control, and decision update statements. We need a collection of objects to iterate over for this loop. So just to explain, I'll create one array of strings. So we have the string class, and the way you define an array is to use square brackets. And then we will name the array beverage brands. And then we will start creating the array, start adding the members within the array. We defined few strings. These are called string literals. And then we have assigned these string literals to this array. So this array is now containing 5 strings. So let's say when we define a string like this, let's say string single string equals to some literal. So when we define a string like this single string reference is just containing one string. This is containing one string literal. And how does it differ from this particular reference, beverage brands? Beverage brands being an array contains 5 strings. So 5 different strings are contained within a single reference. And if it is not an array, then we have only one single string assigned to this reference. Now we will see how we can iterate over this particular array. So we will write for, then we will write the object type which is there within the array. So within this array we basically have string object types and beverage brands, and we will print out the brand name. So basically this beverage brands is now containing 5 items, and this loop will execute for each of these 5 items once. And this println statement will actually print out all the entries in this particular array. So if we run this, we will see all the members that we have defined in the beverage brands array getting printed out. That is how we can use for each loops with built-in types. Now we will see how we can use the for each loop with a custom data type. So we will create a custom data type called shape. So I'll come out of the main method because I want to declare a class within another class. So I'll create a private static class called shape. and I'll declare two members, name and sites. We will define one constructor and we will assign the value to the data members like this. Now that we have the constructor, what we can do is we can just create a list of objects of type shape. So this is again a little bit advanced. So we write list, and list will contain objects of type shape, and we will call this shape list. And then we will create new shape objects. So I'll create square of sides 4 and another shape object called triangle of side 3. Now we will iterate over these two objects using the for each loop. So for shape colon, and the name of the list that we iterate over is shape list. And now we are just going to print out the properties of the shape object, which is the name of the shape and the number of sides the shape has. So we can print out name colon shape dot name, and sides shape dot sides. Now if we run this, we are seeing that we are able to print out the value of the data members within the object. So we get the name of the shape and the sides contained for the first shape object that we have iterated over, and same goes for the next object, which is a triangle with 3 sides.
We covered in detail most of the aspects of using for and for each. There are few more interesting ways of looping using streaming in Java. Since at the moment this is a beginner's tutorial, it's best kept out of scope. If need arises, we will touch upon its absolute basics. So in our next lesson, we will be covering two frequently used keywords, that is break and continue. See you there. Bye.